So, hi everyone. I'm James Foster from Careers Matter, and today I'm joined by Steve Chambers. Steve's a true veteran of tech innovation and hiring wisdom. Over his career, Steve has pioneered trends before they were trends. He's invented the term hyperconvergence at Cisco, worked on chip cards before anyone was using them, and even navigated the rise of cloud tech before the cloud was a thing. He's held titles from CTO to COO, contributed across multiple domains in companies like VMware, Cisco, and LoudCloud with a 360-degree perspective. Steve has been a customer, a partner, a vendor, and an executive, giving him unique insight into what's broken in hiring and how it might be fixed. So, hi, Steve.
Hi, I feel really old listening to that, James.
So just a little bit of housekeeping, guys. If you're watching this, any questions, feel free to put them up in the chat, put them in as comments. I will pick them up and I'll ask them at the appropriate time. So meanwhile, I'm going to crack on and ask Steve a couple of questions. So Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get going.
Yeah, probably work backwards from what I'm getting up to today, right? Because I think that's really pertinent to the chat we're going to have. I guess I'm a freelancer stroke fractional, because fractional's the cool word these days, right? Person who helps companies, whether it's startups, so I work with some growth startups, a couple of stealth startups, but I also help bigger companies. And I've been spending a lot of time in security of late, because that's just a huge, interesting place. But relevant to this chat, I must get calls every week from hiring managers, recruitment consultants, and also candidates. I got one this morning, James, just before this call. Hey, Steve, I'm thinking of moving on from X. What are you seeing in the market? You know, what do you think might suit me? So, so that's where I'm spending my time today. And I got here basically... prior to this, I was working at CloudSoft, the COO. We built an AWS practice from scratch. We also had a software company. And before that, I was doing a range of things, including analyst work. So looking at the industry even being on the cube and things like that. So, and then before that was the big vendors, right? So that's where I really cut my teeth.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been ahead of the curve in tech for years. So can you tell us a bit more about how you first sensed a trend before it took off and how that approach might apply to job seekers today?
I think a large part of it, unfortunately, James, is luck. Let's be honest, right? It really is.
Yeah.
But another part is constantly talking to people and listening. And I've got a generally helpful attitude to life, right? Which means people speak to me, I talk to them. One of the challenges today, though, is not being present in the offices as much as we used to do, right? And not going for drinks and dinner and going to events and things like that. So it's a lot harder these days, I think, to keep your finger on the pulse, which I think means you've got to spend more time actively outreaching to people and finding out how you can help. I mean, a classic, James, is we all get messages on LinkedIn, private messages, right, with people trying to sell you something.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to say to people, instead of trying to sell me something, why don't you ask me what I'm doing, although you can find that out online, and find out how we might be able to help each other. That would be a good start, right?
Yeah.
So from that's where I see common things appearing. I mean, that's where I could see FinOps coming from a long way away. I mean, I was working at Strategic Blue before FinOps was a thing, because having been a cloud practitioner, cost and security were the number one things to deal with, right, for clients. Yeah. And it was really difficult. So you could see something was going to happen, and lo and behold, look what we've got today, a huge industry called FinOps.
Indeed. So what's been the biggest shift you've seen in how people get hired, especially as someone who's hired at every level, from individual contributor to CXO?
I think there's still some things are the same. I think the network is super important. And I remember when I was at VMware, and I used to be active on LinkedIn and what was then called Twitter. And a lot of the other people used to like laugh at me. Well, Steve's on social media again. What a waste of time. And I used to say to him then, and it's true today, you need to be building your network when you don't need it, because when you do need it, it's too late to start.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that continuous networking every week, if you can make a touch point every day with someone, that might sound ridiculous, but you'll start building up a network of people that know you. And guess what? When you talk to people regularly, guess who they think of first when something appears? I remember working for Andrea Eubanks at VMware and in technical marketing, and there was a job advertised for working in the over in Tokyo. And she knew that one of the guys on our team wanted to go and work over there. So immediately in the meeting, she said, I know the person, right? That's it, done. That's what an exec wants, right? They just want, right guy. And somebody else came into her office and complained that the job hadn't been advertised properly. And there was, and Andrea said to this person, this is not how the world works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking for jobs online is one way of doing it. But the trend is still the same. You need to be top of mind, right, James, with people. So I think that's still true today. I think we're probably going to talk about this in a bit more depth, but I look at LinkedIn and I look at job sites, actually not very much these days, because it's like a cacophony of noise and very little signal in there. You can learn some things from it, but I wouldn't rely just on that, right, to find.
I totally agree. I mean, yeah. So the whole thing with social media is when it got started, people didn't really understand how to use it. Then when they started to understand how to use it, they abused it. And now it's got to a point where it's really difficult to pick out what's really worthwhile and what's not worthwhile. And I don't know that I've cracked it yet, but I will say this, as far as networking is concerned, your LinkedIn profile, what you do on LinkedIn is still very, very important. If you haven't got a presence on LinkedIn, or if you don't maintain your presence on LinkedIn, then people will always still check you out there. They will always come and see what you're doing, what you're involved with. And if you've got the right interaction, if you've got the right type of articles going out, if you're making some form of I don't know what the word is. If you're contributing effectively on LinkedIn, then it does get noticed. People will see it and it will have an impact. But if you're not there, if you don't have that, then it damages you, or it can damage you.
And James, I don't know if I'm British, right? And there's we can joke about the British stiff upper lip and not banging your own drum, right? Tall poppy syndrome and all the things that people say about British people. But another thing that's true about both the algorithms of social media and how you connect to people, you're dead right, contributing things. So writing your own thing, your own take, whether it's a technical how-to guide or an observation or reporting something you learned, whatever it is, right? It's all helpful. But if you reach out to people and say, hey, I did a thing, have you got 2 minutes to have a look? What do you think?
Yeah.
This is how the algorithm rewards you. I saw a great post just this week, and he said, before you post anything on social media, go on and always be commenting on other people's social media. And those other people are the people you want to work with or be like or whatever, right? Engage with them and the algorithm will reward you. Then you post your thing. Could be a LinkedIn article, could be a thread on X, whatever that thing is. And see if you can get people to engage with it, even if they just reply or even, whatever that is. That is there's so many people not doing that today. So I don't know if it's because they're shy or they don't want to seem pushy, but it's not. I mean, the great thing about social media is you've got a direct connection to people, right? That's always been the good thing.
Yeah.
You can reach out to the chief revenue officer of some amazing companies. If you've got something interesting, they will respond.
Yeah. And it's one of the prime aspects of what I do as a career coach in helping people to get themselves noticed in the market is basically maintain your network. Who are the people that you may want to work for in the future? Who are the people that you're going to be working in their teams in the future. Connect with these people, interact with these people, contribute, add value to the whole process.
Yeah.
You get noticed. And when anything happens, anything comes along, they're going to notice you and they're going to come to you.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be in the top 1%, honestly, James, if people do this,
Yeah.
because majority don't. I was on a call last year with a lot of senior salespeople, right? And they were still joking about LinkedIn. What a waste of time. There's a load of rubbish on it. And I said to them, well, the funny thing is, your timeline on LinkedIn and X reflects how you engage with it, because that's what the algorithm does. It shows you things that you're interested in, but you've got to tell it what you're interested in, right?
Yeah.
And the people that will appear will be the people that you engage with. So your timeline is your responsibility, right? And that's why you need to spend, even if you just do a reply or a comment each day to the right people that you want to be involved with, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's 100% correct. So you're vocal about how companies are getting hiring wrong. Can you share us a story or two on that?
I can, yeah. It's like I said to you, I don't want to be thought of as a negative Nelly, as they say up in Yorkshire. But sometimes to find out the right way of doing things, you need to know what the wrong way is, right? So rule those things out.
Yeah.
And to be honest, there are some common things that we see. I think just starting with, for example, the job spec or the job definition or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I wrote the piece, The Four Horses of the Hiring Apocalypse, kind of tongue in cheek, because that's kind of the guy I am. But in response to that, I got loads of candidates saying, like, here's all the things that I've seen that are wrong with hiring, right, Steve? And I'll just name a few of them, right? So one is the job spec, unreasonable, asking for 10 years experience for a technology that's been out for 2.
Yeah.
As soon as candidates read that, they put you in the idiot pile as a company, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you see these job specs and you can tell they're like Frankenstein job specs. They've been written by a bunch of people. Hey, you throw this in and you throw that in. And it's like, oh my God, what is this? So there's that. There's also sometimes these job specs are ghost jobs. When companies think, well, we're not quite sure what we want, so we'll just chuck some mud at the wall and see what sticks, right? It's a fishing exercise. The problem is when people are looking for jobs, they genuinely believe that you are being authentic and there is a job. And if there isn't, like, guess what? People might not complain to you directly, but they talk. And they talk to people like me. And they'll say, oh, Steve, you'll never guess what happened. And they'll tell me. So now that company name is in my head, we all talk about this behind the scenes. And I think the other thing is, companies that are hiring, whether it's the hiring manager themselves or the recruitment consultant, if they're leveraging the partner, is communication and ghosting. Ghosting's an issue. And I've had recruitment people say, like, look, Steve, I've got so much work to do. If someone doesn't make the cut, it's not up to me to tell them, right? So there's those kind of attitude, and I know that upsets people, right?
I think, and I've done 20 years worth of running a recruitment business, so I got an opinion on that or two. The thing with that is this, that if I put a job out on LinkedIn, say, and I get a number of responses, let's put a sort of a figure that's realistic, anywhere between about 80 and 120 responses to what you can consider a popular job, a job that people are going to go for. And of those, probably 70% are tire kickers.
Right.
So they are totally irrelevant to the job. I will never respond to those people. They shouldn't be applying in the first place. They shouldn't be expecting a response. However, whenever I put a job, I would always put in it, if you do not hear back within a certain period of time, consider you're not successful. And just that little bit does make a difference. I think then do it, then make sure you get back within the time that you've said.
I think the problem is, James, sometimes this ghosting and lack of communication happens much further down the back. There was a good friend and colleague of mine went through a process with a large company, and it was many weeks, many interviews, a lot of effort, and then just terrible communication at the end, and he didn't get the role. And wisely or unwisely, he went on LinkedIn and he wrote the whole thing down. And what was interesting was the amount of feedback, because he knows a lot of people in the industry, and the amount of feedback he got with people saying, I've had the same experience. And you think, oh my, is this an endemic problem in the industry?
And the communication channel, I actually talked about this a few weeks ago on one of these sessions that I was doing, me talking to people alone. There's a poor communication process that goes between the hiring manager and the people interfacing with the candidates, and so there's no feedback. The hiring manager is making his comments and he's saying what he wants to say. That's not coming through at all to the candidates. There's a communication breakdown. I've got a question from Ewan here. Generally, I think that a courtesy reply to an application is the least a candidate should expect, but the spammy applications via LinkedIn easy apply are making that pretty impossible. That's really true. That's an excellent point, Ewan. Ghosting is an endemic problem, especially for graduates. That's interesting. Why for graduates, Ewan? Can you comment on that? Just see if he comes back to me.
I think he's right.
I think he's right as well. I just wondered why he was highlighting graduates. That was all.
He's not ghosting you, is he?
He's ghosting me. I'm being ghosted.
I think there's a couple of other things though that are issues. There's one that'll lead on to the 4 horses chat, which is around underestimating the cost, effort, and success. There you go. Ewan said too many people. It's just like you said, it's the cost, time, and effort, and the skill required to do hiring properly. Even though we've got probably more HR people than ever, are hiring managers being trained for hiring? I'm sure they are in some companies, but I know for definite they are not in other companies.
So I can tell you in my time in the industry, and I was I spent 10 years after I left the Royal Navy in working in companies like Mercury, Telewest, Esprit Telecom, basically telecommunication companies. I was given absolutely no training whatsoever in how to hire. If I had a job on, I just had to know what to do, and I didn't. And so you'd call up HR and ask them, and they'd give you the name of a recruiter. So I speak to the recruiter, and they have got no idea what you're talking about. I can remember I was a project manager. I was in project management. I asked for somebody to be, to work for me in telecommunications project management. It's fairly straightforward. I gave them quite a specific requirement, and I got about 20 CVs sent through for me from that agency, all for IT project managers, which have nothing to do with telecommunications project management. And I really wanted somebody who knew what transmission networks were about, who knew what switching networks were about, who knew, et cetera, et cetera. And
I think we've highlighted an interesting point here. I think there's keyword stuffing going on both sides, right? You can get job specs packed with keywords, and then candidates pack their CVs with keywords, because I think you covered this on a previous live stream that you did, James. Talking about making your CV relevant to the role. I remember leaving that thinking, I wonder how many CVs that people have got are relevant to them, actually.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with that. So we can talk about that in a minute. I've got a question from Gareth. Do you think AI doing some of the filtering is a thing and inadvertently filtering out the right people? I think so many people are applying the 70% you mentioned also, James.
Yeah.
So actually, I'll let you. I've got some strong opinions on that, but I'll let you, Steve.
Just disclosure, I know Gareth personally, so
okay, cool. Hey up, Steve.
So I think, so what I've heard from some recruitment folks and hiring managers is they do use internal systems. They do use them. I think it's the problem is some of them that use them, they take whatever AI comes out with as gospel, right? And maybe are not aware. Some, I'm not saying everybody, but some just say, right, okay. It's almost like, is AI a cheat code for HR, right? And like most cheat codes, there is no real cheat code for some of these things, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yes, I don't know how much I would love to know in the industry. The thing is, you can't believe any surveys, right? Because
Yeah.
it's usually sponsored by an AI HR company, right? So I don't know, Gareth. I think it's all over the map, personally.
I've got a couple of contact people that I follow quite closely because they're in the same line of work as me. One of these people, a young lady, trying to think what her name is at the moment. It'll come to me in a minute what her name is. She runs a coaching business similar to mine, but she used to be in HR, and she did a piece on the whole subject and explained how it was used. And effectively, what she was saying was the ATS system, applicant tracking system, they're now intelligence applicant tracking systems, but they're still used in principally the same way. They are the only filtering out they usually do is through filtering questions. So they will ask you direct questions, and if those questions are not answered in the right way, then they filter you out. But in terms of what's in your CV, the keywords, the key phrases, using the right language, etc., etc., she was saying that not so much. That they are passed through to the people that look at them, and it is a human being that is filtering you out. Now, that said, nobody's saying that the human beings know what they're doing. At the end of it, Gareth, you're still being filtered out, and you're still being filtered out because the people don't really understand you and understand what's in your CV. But what Steve was saying a few minutes ago is absolutely true. If your CV isn't relevant to the job, it deserves to be filtered out. And if you're not hearing back, I would say probably 6 or 7 times out of 10, it's because you've not adjusted your CV to really reflect the job you're applying for.
Do you know, there's another thing, I know, James, you and I have talked about this, but there's another thing that's not on your CV, which is really important, and that's your personality.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I know, for example, there's a startup, a SaaS startup called Senya, that does customer testimonials on your website. I think they're on about 50 grand a month now. So they're doing really, really well. And they're looking to grow their team. And they said, we're not going to put a job application up online because we'll just get spammed with AI. They tried it before, and I think they got, it was probably about 120, like you said, James. And they said 90%. And it takes too long to go through them all. But they still did it as a human. And what they're doing now is they're asking you to send in a short Loom video. Introduce yourself, which I thought was interesting. Now, what was interesting was a lot of people pushed back on it. They said, you're going to discriminate against people because of this. And they were like, well, you're going to have to be on video talking to us anyway. So, but you know what I mean?
I think that's a really, really, really good thing to do. Whether it's a Loom or you just sit in front of a camera like this and do a short piece on yourself. I think video is a really powerful medium for getting a message across. But I'd also say, before you do it, think very long and hard about what you're going to say and cut it down. The biggest factor I've seen when people make videos is they don't know when to stop.
Yeah. Are you talking to me now, James?
Maybe.
Fair enough. It's just
using a video profile is an excellent way of getting
it was interesting because they said, that they're a small company. They said we've got a certain vibe going on. We're kind of informal. We like to have a laugh, but we work hard. We want to see, are you that kind of person? That's more important than, have you done 5 years of Python and can you whatever, it's, so I thought that was an interesting take. But the other point I just touched on is, in a previous life, I used to do a lot of work with investors and non-exec directs and stuff like that. And they used to phone me up and say, like, hey, Chambers, we need an AWS guy, right? And so I'd meet him for a coffee. I said, come and tell me what it is you're looking for. And I'd be like, why do you need this? What are they going to do? Why would they want to work with you? And they thought, cheeky Steve, he's, typical Yorkshire humor. I said, no, I'm serious. Why would they want to work with you? Because the good people, they look for jobs that are going to help their career. They don't really care about you and your company, right? They're not the ones that are going to fall for the we're a family kind of thing, right? They are not interested in that whatsoever. So I started having these conversations all the time, and I came up with these 4 things, and I said, look, finding them, which is the job spec and like, do you know what you want kind of thing, is, an AWS architect. Back then there was like 150 AWS services. So it's like, which part of AWS do you want, right? And then it's like attracting them. So why would they want to work for you? Affording them. That was an interesting one, right? Because some hiring managers think the only cost in hiring someone is the base salary and maybe a bonus. And I used to say, oh, no. There's a lot more cost. I mean, the hiring cost at the start, but there's also I called it the fully loaded cost of someone. You've got to pay for their benefits, their pension, national insurance, all the other stuff, right? Which is really boring. And then how do you keep them? And this was interesting in the 4 horses piece I did, because Anthony Sutton was saying what problem he sees, and he talks to a lot of companies doing HR support. He says the company oversells the job in the company, and the client or recruitment agent will oversell the candidate, and you end up with this mismatch. Yeah. And that reveals itself that within 6 to 12 months, they're upset and it's not a fit. And you think, oh my Lord, we spent all that time doing it. And you want to scream out loud, if only everyone could just be a little bit more honest.
No, absolutely. And it's a huge cost to companies, the getting it wrong, huge cost. And I don't think many companies think about it when they're hiring people. They go through a cheapened process to bring people in, so they pay the least they possibly can for the recruitment process. If they can get away without paying it at all, would be a good thing. And they then hire the wrong people, and then they've got to go and do it all again, and they've wasted however many months. They've wasted the salary involved with that, all the value that should have been brought in by that particular person in the job in that period of time, and they're starting again. It's a huge waste of money.
Well, there's a nice tidy circle I think we've just made there, James, in that, people used to wonder why companies like Monzo, I'll just pick Monzo, the UK bank, why have they got an engineering blog? Why is a bank telling us how they do their engineering? And the reason is because they want to attract like-minded engineers, right? Mm-hmm. So guess what? Really good engineers like reading a really good engineering blog. And guess what? Those people are asking like, hey, is there anything going on? That if someone's reading your engineering blog and they interact with you and they talk to you and they ask you if there are any roles going, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be quite a decent person, I would imagine, right? Which is a strong signal. So I would say whether you're hiring or whether you're a candidate, that information sharing, and it's honestly, and it's free. Information sharing doesn't cost anything. And you'll find like-minded people. So another thing is, if you reply to a LinkedIn post from Monzo Engineering or on X or wherever, you'll find other like-minded people. If you can find a way to connect with them, all of a sudden you've got this kind of community thing going, right? Mm-hmm. And if you follow them, you'll see what else is going on in the industry. And it's a little bit like being in the intelligence services, right? That's really what this is you're putting some crumbs out, you're watching what's going on, and you're trying to think up. Because one thing is, if you're not passionate or interested in this stuff, you won't do that, right? Who's going to do that? So it's almost like self-selecting, James, in that if you follow the people, companies, and topics that you like, you will find opportunities for a job in that journey, without a doubt. That's happened to me multiple times.
Hmm.
So
Just to do a little bit of promoting myself for a minute, if I was to tell people generally that the job market, the active job market, though those jobs that you see advertised, if you're anywhere mid to senior level, let's say you're experienced project manager or developer or whatever experience, anybody who's got anything specific above that sort of level, it's probably true to say that 70% of the jobs that are filled are not filled through the advertised market.
great
That's a
point.
huge percentage of the hiring market is not filled through active job applications.
Mhm. And
And
you know, there's an important point in this as well, James. In that, I know some companies have to advertise. You know, there's a process. I totally get it, but I'm pretty sure that they know who they probably want for that role, right? And
well,
and if
I can say factually that's the case.
and then if a company, an unheard of company, pops up looking for a senior person, I see this all the time. I'm like, you know, I don't know. My confidence in them being real and that job being real is 20% or less, I
Yeah.
would say. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just what I've seen, you know?
Well, you've also got a proliferation of jobs on the hiring market. So the company advertises it on their website.
Yep.
They then go and put it on a job board, 2 job boards, 3 job boards, LinkedIn. They then get their PSL, and their PSL. So this preferred supplier list of recruiters. These are the 12 to 15 percenters. They advertise it everywhere. So you've now got one job that's advertised probably by about 3, 4, or 5 separate agencies and the company. And if you think how many times, if they're putting it on multiple job boards, they're putting it on LinkedIn, how many times that one single job is being advertised, it then gets aggregated into systems like Indeed and Glassdoor and places like that, and re-advertised again. You know, I had applicants for jobs that I put out that were coming from job boards I'd never heard of because they're getting aggregated and pushed around. So you're seeing all these jobs, and there are not that many there, not as many as you think. So
I sometimes wonder, James, you'll know more about this than I will, but I'd be interested, like, you know, in sales and marketing, right? Marketing gets measured on, let's call them marketing qualified leads into sales, and sales qualify those again. But sales are kind of judged on closing deals, right?
yeah,
And marketing's judged on creating leads and opportunities, right?
yeah.
Very simplistic, but you know what I mean. It's got to be the same in recruitment, right? I can imagine someone gets bonused and incentivized to fill the pipeline with as much as you can, and then someone else gets on site, trim that down as much as you can, right? And you can see the tension.
Well, the dynamic is the dynamic is this. It's all on numbers, and so an individual's tasked with going out and finding yay many jobs in a day. So they go out there and they find those jobs. Um, they're not necessarily authorized to work on them, but will they find where these jobs are? They see advert, they work on adverts, etc., and they re-advertise those jobs. So
I see.
and then candidates that come in, what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and fit those candidates into the hiring managers for those jobs. So they're going to try and go through the back door into to getting that candidate pushed forward. So a lot of the time when you're working with some of these agencies, they don't actually have authorization to work on the job. They're basically ad chasing.
I see.
Um,
Right.
and again, it's pressure that's put on by their management to say, if you don't get this many jobs, you're out. You know, so that's how they do it.
It's like that phrase, it's why we can't have nice things, right? I mean, a lot
Yeah,
of people blame AI, and I get that, right? But I think it's not AI's fault, right? AI is just a tool. I think there's a human nature thing about cheat codes and shortcuts, right? And you've got a great phrase, which I really like, James, when you say, do you want a job or a career?
Mm.
I don't know if you want to explain to people what you mean by that, but that really makes sense to me.
Yeah. So the explanation is as simple as this. You apply for a job. You go out there to get a job. Any job will do. Whatever that job is, however much it's paying, I need that job. I want that job. Or you can have a career. I want some direction in where I'm going. I want to be able to have some control over what I'm doing and what I'm about. I want to be able to predict the path that my career takes. That's the career. The whole idea of a career is I've got purpose, I've got direction, I've got clarity of where I want to go. Or you're just getting up on a Monday morning for the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the rest of it is how do I pay for the weekend, or for that 2 weeks holiday you get a year, whatever it is. You Mondays are hated. you know what I mean.
I do.
So do you want a job? Do you want a career?
Yeah, and again, the networking, another challenge that I encourage everyone to try and get over is, for the longest time, we used to go to work in an office. We used to talk to people all the time in person. We used to go to events in person. COVID saw the end of that, right?
Yep.
And so all those natural, seemingly useless chats were actually quite good, right? Because you got to know who was who. I'm still friends with people I worked with at the Bank of Scotland in the 90s, right? Because we used to have a coffee.
Do you remember you used to collect their business cards and have them in little booklets so you could go through?
I do. And so I think, one of the things when I talk to a company about, like, I got asked by a startup this week, do you know any developers, Steve? Right. And this is a business person, right? And I was like, that is, with all due respect, that's the most useless question I've ever heard in my life. Let's work on that together. And one of the things I said to him was, because he's doing it kind of in stealth, which I don't think he should be doing. That's a whole other topic. If he was talking and sharing some of what he was doing, I said, you would attract people, right? And these people would, just by interacting with you, show you they know what they're talking about. They stick their head above the parapet. You will find people. I promise you, right? This is the way the world works. But if you just advertise, don't advertise for a developer, because that's crazy, right? It's like advertising for an architect, an IT architect. I mean, what does that really mean?
What does that mean? Yeah.
What does it mean? So we worked on that a little bit, and we, what languages and frameworks do they use? And we went through all that good stuff. But I said, if you shared it, people will interact with you, and they will say to you, are there any opportunities going? My contract finishes this month. I've been, that's how conversations happen. And so that's why I kind of reckon, but it works on both sides, right? So he's going to do more of that. But I would say to any candidates looking for roles out there, you've got to get out there and network, man. Online, it's a little bit harder, but there are ways to do it. But you got to do it.
No, you're 100% correct. I'd also say the other side of your argument there is true, where you talk about I want a developer. I am a developer. What does that mean? I'm a Java developer. What does that mean? What have you actually done? What difference have you made? What impact have you had? Tell me something about the challenges that you've faced and how you've overcome them. Give me something to work on that's going to say, this is what I can do for you. This is the value that I bring to your organization. This is the difference I can make for your team, etc., etc. So what is it when you say you're a developer? Tell me what it is you develop and why you are so indispensable. I think indispensable.
And I think sometimes candidates are kind of scared of sharing their experience because they think it might not be relevant and it's going to scupper my chances.
Mm-hmm.
But good companies that you actually want to work for versus companies that you don't want to work for. If you've been doing programming in a language, that's not the language they've been using, but you demonstrate that like your point, James, you've been doing things, you've been solving problems. I mean, God, any technical job, you don't know all the answers. You've got to learn stuff all the time, constantly learning. You can show that. Like, I'm solid in Python, right? Great at that. What about JavaScript? Nah, I can do some of that, Well, we use React, go through keywords. But someone smart will say, all right, they can learn that stuff, but I really like their attitude to it, And, it's, I remember when I got the Loud Cloud job, after 4 interviews of 4 hours each, right, thinking, I am so not qualified for this job. It was a big jump up for me. This is 2002.
Yeah.
And in the end, they said, we're going to give you the job, Steve, because we think you're the least qualified, but we like you the most.
Which actually says a lot.
And obviously they were crazy. Didn't know what we were talking about. But it's true, though, and I know a lot of...
How long were you there for? How long were you at Loud Cloud?
Well, that was back in the days when they split it into 2. Half of it was software. I ended up in EDS, or as we called it, everything delivered slowly, which I think Gareth might remember. And then I joined VMware, right? So, but it's true. Then I know a lot of really likable people who are very capable, but they don't blow their own trumpet. You might think they've not even got a trumpet, right? And I know different. And I'm like, come on, get out there. Get talking.
There's one thing. You're 100% correct. It's the one thing that I have to really instill into people when I'm talking to them about how to create a CV, just your CV, that in a way that's going to get noticed, is actually tell people about what you really do for them, what you could, sell yourself. Don't be shy. If you've created something, if you've made something happen, if you've been part of a successful project, talk about it. Tell them about it. Tell them about the difference and the impact you made. It's so vital that it's what gets people noticed. It's what, and it makes your interview so much easier, because guess what they're going to talk about?
I think that's why your advice is different, James, and it's why I've sent a few people your ways, because I think sometimes people see their CV as this detached thing that doesn't really, they stuffed with keywords or whatever it is, and it's not really them, is it?
No.
And someone like you that for each job looks at 120 of these things, right? You're going to spot the ones you actually want to spend some time on. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of bad CV advice out there, right?
There is. No, there undoubtedly is. Do you know
I'm not perfect at it either.
My pet hate is the template CV. Yeah, if you want absolute obscurity and anonymity, go for a template CV.
Yeah. You use size 11 fonts, like I know. It drives you crazy. Yeah.
We've been talking for 45 minutes, almost. Is there anything else you want to sort of cover off before we finish? Because I guess it's a wake-up call, right? In that I hear a lot of people complaining that the job market's difficult because of everything except themselves, right? So AI is a nuisance. Job specs are terrible. Companies are ghosted. That is true. All those things are true to some degree. But I swear the best advice I would give anyone for job hunting, career building, is to take responsibility for your own thing. You've got to get out there. You've got to be relevant. I mean, that is a great message you have, James, is communicate what you're doing, what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, and what you solved, and what value you gave, and why is it relevant to what you're going after. Because if it's not relevant to what you're going after, you shouldn't be going after it, right? No.
Be true to yourself about what you want to do and go for it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, any other questions out there? Because we're going to wrap up in a second. What I will say is, let me just grab these. Steve has the 4 horses of the hiring apocalypse, which he penned a little while ago. There's a link for that in the description that comes that comes with this live event. I can't see it from your point of view, guys. So
Yeah.
if you go down, you see the description, open that out, and you see a couple of links. One of those will take you to the 4 horses of the hiring apocalypse. And as for me, this time next week on Friday the 22nd, I'm running a live webinar, strategies for career success. Basically, this webinar is going to tear apart the recruitment industry, the whole, but I'll put my cards on the table. It's all about positioning my services, my solution. I'm looking to get a group coaching session going that will help you to strategize how to get a job effectively, that you're in control of this career rather than the job approach, if you see what I mean. That's what that's about. I've got a comment just come in, which I need to read.
Yeah, I'd love to address that one, James, but I'll follow you, mate.
Any further measures you suggest to filter the ever-growing mass of automatically submitted, perfectly tuned applications? That's LinkedIn users. That's somebody who doesn't know me. Go for it.
Well, first of all, stop doing it to yourself is the first thing I would say. You've already touched on it, James. If your job ad appears all over the world in lots of different things, you're going to get exponentially amount of applications from people that know nothing about you, right? I mean, the way that, as I mentioned, that Senior doing it, they're asking people to do a short 3-minute or less introductory video. That immediately puts people off, right? Immediately. I mean, someone said, oh, well, I can now create an AI avatar. And no, yes, you can, but no, you won't, right? Mm-hmm. Because, they'll be able to tell it what it is. You mentioned the ATS system, the application tracking system. I don't know if they're building in AI detection, but even those systems don't work, right?
AI is part of it these days. It is a part of it. But as I say, if it's Rosie McCarthy was the person I was trying to remember. If what Rosie was saying is true, and I believe that she knows what she's talking about. The idea of the ATS isn't to filter people out, other than on a few basic questions like where do you live and have you got this qualification, I guess. But the idea of it is to prioritize, to rank people, and then to give the recruiters who are doing the assessment something to go off. The issue is, does the recruiter really know what the job's about in the first place?
I know another technique that people are doing is I think most people put their LinkedIn profile on their CV right nowadays, or their social media, it's up to them. But checking that, is that person linked to your company? Are they linked? Are they a first degree, second degree connection? It's all these signs of where are they in the network? How authentic is this person? What have they been doing? I know people look through LinkedIn, right, for what's being done. That takes time though, and I think the thing that frustrates me is yes, there are a lot of spammy applications, but trying to solve that with a spammy process, that arms race is a bit rubbish. I think at the end of the day, it does come down to human beings, ATS is great, but human beings are going to go through it. I mean, I did see a video, it was terrible, of someone applying for, one of the big FANG companies with ChatGPT on one screen and answering questions on the other, right? You are going to get people like that, but I think they're in low amounts. But
yeah, I think we've just about done.
Great. Thanks for the questions.
Thanks guys for the questions. If anything comes in the next 30 seconds, we'll try to answer it. Check those links out in the description. I'd love to see you guys at the webinar next week. Just hit that link to register, and look out, because there'll be some other stuff coming out about that webinar over LinkedIn shortly.
Yep.
Anything you would like to say to close, Steve?
Just one thing. If you get a chance to have a look at the 4 horses of the hiring apocalypse, that was really written from a recruitment hiring point of view. But I've got another one coming out next week called The Candid Candidate. And that's a long list of complaints that candidates have about the process. and how to spot them and avoid them and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Once that's out, I'd love to do another session. We can talk about that specifically. That would be a good one.
yeah, I won't give away the punchline, but I've actually explained it in this meeting. But so if you read the article and you've been on this thing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. So thanks everyone. I hope this has been useful to you. Keep an eye out. I do regular broadcasts on a Friday of one form or another. I will be doing the webinar next week, and I will be looking at CV hints and tips coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.